So today marks the end of an era. This is our final message in this series on Proverbs that we embarked on about 3 months ago. And so I've entitled this message, Closing Arguments. This is going to be a little bit of a mishmash of some of the kind of Proverbs that we find throughout the book that deal with this really interesting word, and it's the word better. When we started off on this journey, we talked about how the point of the wisdom being provided to us in these Proverbs isn't necessarily to help us know exactly the difference between black and white, but that as each of us are navigating through this world with our own experience and with our own perspective and with our own understanding of things, there are times where we come across decisions that we have to make. There are times where we have to come and weigh the value of one particular choice over another. Surely there are in our lives the differences between right and wrong. Surely there are at times the differences between black and white. But a lot of times we find ourselves kind of up against the value of two choices or the value of two sets of circumstances. And part of what I believe is trying to come out of and be revealed to us through the wisdom literature of the Bible is an understanding, it is an arming, it is a tooling, if you will, to give us the ability to make better choices. And so as you read through the Proverbs, they come in a variety of forms, but oftentimes you'll find the author differentiating between one circumstance and another. And he essentially says, it is better to have this than it is to have that. And so we're just going to kind of look at a few of those this morning as we close out our time together in this wonderful, wonderful book. Our first proverb comes from Proverbs 16 and verse 19. And here it says, it is better to be of a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. The author here differentiating between a couple of things. One is what it means to be lowly in spirit and what it means to be proud. And here, interestingly, there seems to be this contrast between those relegated to the class of the poor and those that are living through this life with a lot of reasons for which to be proud. So we know, and perhaps we have even individually experienced one or both of these states. Perhaps your story is one where for a large part of your life, you knew what it was like to be poor. You knew what it was like to go without. You knew what it was like to not necessarily be able to just click a couple buttons on your mouse, with your computer, and have whatever it is, whatever suited your fancy, just make its way from the Amazon storehouses to you, right? Because you had to be careful about how you spent your money. And perhaps there were times where there wasn't even really enough money to meet what would generally be considered to be the base needs of your life. And so you know what it's like to experience poverty to some sense. Perhaps you have experienced the far different kind of side of that, and you know what it's like to have not only plenty, but perhaps even as you look at your life, you say, boy, there is a lot in my life for which I can be proud, right? The proud here are pictured to be the victors, if you will. When you consider life and all of the opportunities that it affords, and if we were to try to separate from the world's perspective the winners from the losers, here it is the proud who are seen as the victors, right? They've fought and they've shown their dominance in how to navigate through this life, right? They've learned and figured out how to win at money. They've learned how to win at power and influence. They have learned how to win when it comes to material goods and possessions, right? And there is little that they go without. And again, as they look at and as they consider the sum total of their lives, there's a lot to be proud of. Perhaps it's an education, right? It's a certain kind of degree of attainment when it comes to the educational pursuits. There's, after their name, some designations that show a great degree of hard work and time and investment spent into becoming smarter, to becoming more of a professional in whatever field of study. And again, there's a pride that can be associated with that. Or perhaps they have started and grown a business into something that is really, really worth kind of oohing and aahing over. Like, wow, you really did something here. Again, just a wonderful thing to be proud of. They have shown themselves to be victors in this life. But here the author, as he is differentiating between the poor and the proud, he's saying that when it comes to the variety of states, right, the comparison of these two states, it is better if the choice must be made to be of a lowly spirit and to be associated with, or to have your lot cast in with the poor. It is better to have yourself relegated to this place of poverty than to divide the spoil with the proud. Now, we've heard of the term dividing the spoil, right? How it kind of speaks of some military conquest where after one group of people subjugates another, they take control over all of the goods and worldly possessions of that other group, and then they divide it among themselves. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Right? Who wouldn't want to have the opportunity when it comes to the pool of things that life has to offer for you to be able to get your share, right? We all spend some degree of effort in our lives trying to get our share. The trouble is, first of all, what it often takes to get there. You're not going to find in the Proverbs or even really in the Bible and in good Christian teaching, you're not going to find anywhere an absolute outright denunciation of wealth, of prosperity, of worldly goods. You're never going to find the Bible just coming out and saying that it has moral opposition to riches and wealth and good things and all of that. You're never going to find that. The trouble that you're going to find, and where I believe Scripture wants us to really understand the implications of such things as wealth and material possessions and success, as this world counts success, is that we need to be on guard against what it often takes to get there. Right? That's really a big part of the problem. What did it cost for me to get where I am? What did it cost me to accumulate what I have earned over my life, right? That's the trouble. What does it take to get there? And so even in the Proverbs, I mean, you'll have the Proverbs really trying to set us up to understand that, hey, listen, like seeking out poverty, that doesn't align with wise living, right? It talks about all kinds of vices, if you will, that will lead a person into poverty, and it's warning us again and again and again, stay away from that. So it is not just outright bringing to the very best of circumstances that we should all find ourselves impoverished. But when it comes to riches, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to the goods of this world, the question we have to ask, well, what does it take to get there? What's it going to cost me? Now think about what you've earned. Think about where you've come, right? Think about what are those things in your life that you can be really, really proud of, right? Like just let those kind of rattle around in your head. Again, it could be an education, it could be a career, it could be a business, it could be stuff, it could be the figures, on the bottom of your bank statement, right? It could be any number of things. But all those things came with a cost. Now, as you consider how proud you may be of any of those, you must ask yourself at the same time, well, What did it cost me to get there? So for instance, I could say, well, I have done really, really, really well for myself, but it cost me my family. Like you hear that kind of thing all the time. You talk to a man or a woman who, again, by the world's standards, has achieved a very, very high degree of success, has advanced very, very well in their profession or their career. They are looked at with great respect. They are counted on, right? There are people that look to them for expertise and advice as they're trying to make their way in that same field. And they could say, I gave my life to this thing. My sweat, my blood, my tears, I just poured myself into this thing and into becoming what I am. But I could also tell you at the same time, like it cost me my marriage. It cost me a relationship to some extent with my children, right? So that's the thing we have to be on guard against. The other thing is just the progression of having arrived at this place where we have so much to be proud of. The proverb here seems to suggest that once there, the wealthy tend to become arrogant, right? Those who have much to be proud of, they have this tendency, if they're not careful, if they're not on guard against it, they have a tendency to become arrogant. To start to really think about themselves in light of themselves and what they have accomplished and what they have done. Their riches, or whatever those things are that would be the earmarks of their success, they tend to inflate how they see themselves. Now, this might not describe you, but I'll bet you know somebody like this. I'll bet you know somebody who they really think something of themselves. They are pretty happy with who they've become and what they've done. And that's because our success has this tendency, if we're not careful, to inflate how we see ourselves. One commentator says, their minds rise with their condition. You see, when you are of a lowly estate, right? When you are not highly regarded by society, when you don't sit or stand in this place of being esteemed by the masses, when there is little for which you can point to and say, look at what I have done, or look at what I have accomplished, or look at what I've become, well, you're probably likely to consider yourself with more perspective than you would otherwise, than you would if you had all of these things to point out, right? Their minds rise with their condition. As I become more successful, as I become richer, I have a tendency, if I'm not careful, to let my mind rise with that condition. And that is something for which every one of us needs to be on guard. The verse prior to the verse we just read is one you've all heard. Some of you have memorized. Verse 18 says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. You are going to find very, very little throughout the pages of Scripture that God has a bigger problem with than pride. Pride is the ultimate barrier between a person and the potential of a rich relationship with God. And pride is the thing you and I need to guard our hearts against. And so wherever you find yourself in this life, however well you may be esteemed, and for whatever you have to be proud, do not let pride rob you of the richness of a relationship with God. Because as you allow yourself to see and to esteem yourself more highly than you ought, it comes at the cost of a rich relationship with God. And we have to be careful about the things for which we put in our effort, our energy, our time, our talent, our treasure, all of those things. Because as good as some of those things may be, count the cost. Consider what implications there are for other areas of your life. Proverbs 27, verse 10, we move on. This is an interesting one. It says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of calamity. And here's the better statement. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. One of the things that you will see extolled over and over and over again throughout Scripture, and I think through just as we grow in our understanding of God's heart, is the richness and the reward of relationships. God created every one of us as relational beings. Now, you might sit out there and you would describe yourself as a person that's not crazy about other people. I'd love to ask you to raise your hand if you identify with that, but that would just be mean. But that's the reality, right? I mean, some of us, we're not that crazy about other people. Some of you, I mean, you can't even take your next breath, right, outside the presence and the company of another person. And so we have these variety of kind of personalities and personhood types. But one thing, wherever you may be on this gamut of like how richly you value relationships, is that as you are growing in a relationship with Christ, there should be a higher degree of value that you place in relationships with other people than anything else in this world. Like, it is the thing. It is the thing for which we are created. First and foremost, right, is our relationship with God. You cannot have a life in proper balance outside of the priority of a relationship with God. You can look like you do. You can have the appearance of working through life and having everything as anyone would ever want it to be. But listen, if your relationship with God is not a priority, you will find yourself out of balance. You will find yourself missing something. And you will do everything you can to try to kind of fill that, right? And so our relationship with God is paramount. But secondly, is our relationship with other people. And here, it's interesting, the proverb, it kind of heightens the value of a relationship with somebody who's not related to you. And we all know how important our familial relationships are. We all know how important and also how valuable they can oftentimes be, right? These relationships we have with people that are blood relatives. But here is this reminder to not abandon and not forget about the importance of relationships for which there is no natural connection. Like, you have to love your brother or sister. You have to love your parents. You have to love your children, right? Because we all know there's this sort of, moral obligation to love the people that are part of our family. This coming Saturday, I have a family reunion. And for the very fact that we are currently airing this message online and that it is available for time and eternity, I will say, I can't wait to go to my family reunion. Am I right? Family is a wonderful thing, but don't forget the value of a relationship with a neighbor. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Essentially telling us that relationships are worth the effort. How many of you know relationships are worth, they take a lot of effort. They really do. For a relationship to be like healthy and strong, it takes a lot of effort. I've been fortunate. I've had some friends in my life, and I have had some people in my life where it's just so easy to be with them. It's so easy. There's just very, very little effort that needs to go into, that needs to be poured into that relationship. But you know what I found is that sometimes the ease of that relationship has also ultimately just created separation. Not bad separation, but you know what it's like, right? You in high school, you had your besties, you had the people that were your very best friends, and you thought we are going to be like this forever. Chances are you don't even know where any of them even live right now, right? And if it weren't for Facebook, you really wouldn't. It's only through social media that some of those connections have been able to be maintained or kind of rekindled or reunited over the years. The reality is that a lot of those relationships that in our lives have just kind of come and gone. The ones that seem to stick around, the ones that seem to have a really high degree of value and importance in our lives are the ones for which the most effort is required. And I think that's part of why this comparison is made. It's saying, listen, it's a natural kind of bond, right? The relationship between siblings, for instance, right? Here it talks about a brother, the love, the relationship that you have with a brother. Like that's supposed to be automatic. You're supposed to take care of one another. You're supposed to care about each other. But what about those relationships that require more effort than that? Here, I think we're highlighting the fact that they're worth the effort. Now, what we want is we want to have the benefits of relationships without the hard work necessary to make those relationships good and healthy and strong. I want to have a best friend who never, ever, ever is going to need me to help him move, right, from one house to another. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want a group of friends that when I need them, they're going to be there. When I need them, they're going to be ready to help, but that they themselves are really low-maintenance friends, right? That's what I want. But there's something to be said for the value that we place in a relationship where it's worth it to us to put in the effort necessary to maintain that relationship, to guard that relationship, to, when there's conflict, to find resolution and forgiveness for that relationship. Because in this case, it seems as if water can, at times, run thicker than blood. And listen, I know some of you, because of your particular familial circumstances, where as you consider your place in your family, you don't have that deep relationship with parents. You don't have that deep relationship with siblings, right? As you consider your blood relatives, there are few, if any, that you would consider to be friends, right? Because you just don't have that. Many of us find ourselves in that category, and so it is absolutely essential for us to know that we can develop the kind of lifelong, persevering friendships with other people if we're willing to put the effort into it. Proverbs 27, verse 5. Isn't this great? This is like, 3-4 sermons all wrapped up in one. Some of you are like, I don't have to come to church in September, right? Because I just got 4 sermons on the first Sunday in September. Proverbs 27, verse 5. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. You're all going to love this one. Because who doesn't love open rebuke from time to time, right? Who doesn't love, for somebody to come and say, hey, can I be honest with you for a second? Like, that's not a conversation any of us want to continue on, right? It's like, I have to go to the bathroom, right? And then you're going to, escape through the hatch, the window there, and hopefully never see that person again. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. What's going on here? Well, it is helping us to understand that there is a kind of love that conceals itself in those moments, in those critical moments where rebuke is actually necessary. And so it regards that kind of love as essentially morally useless. It's empty. It's just of no real benefit, that kind of love. When it says a love that is hidden, that word hidden literally means closed up or withdrawn. right? It's not that there isn't love that's there. It's just that it has been concealed. And it's contrasted here in this verse with the word open, which means literally to uncover or to reveal. That is to say something with honesty for the benefit of the person to whom it is being said. And it is better to have the open rebuke of a friend, of somebody that loves and cares about you, than for your circle of people around you to withdraw, to close up, or to conceal their love. And here I would say the proverb is helping us to understand that love withdrawn, again, that's what the word literally means, withdrawn. Love withdrawn is not love. Now, that's a really tough saying in the day and age in which we live, right? Because we are just constantly hit with the importance of just loving, right? Without even qualifying the definition of what love is, of what kind of love we're actually talking about and describing. And the Bible has a lot to say about love and about what love is and about what love looks like. And here the proverb helps to illustrate the fact that sometimes, when necessary, what love looks like is it looks like rebuke. It looks like a word spoken in love, a word that is given not to make me look like I am superior in this regard compared with the person to whom I'm speaking. It is not for me to hold power over another person. It is not for the purpose of oppression or subjugation or anything like that. It is with the idea, with the mindset that each individual born into this world has inherent value and dignity with God. That God loves passionately, vigorously, wonderfully, indescribably every single one of us. And because of that love, wants to see a trajectory of our lives that is going to a place where we are going to experience the most utter fulfillment we can possibly experience in this life. That's what God wants for us. But as we have seen in this book of Proverbs, what you and I often do is we make choices that are inferior to better choices. And in doing that, we invite bad things sometimes. We invite less ideal things into our lives. We seek after something that we think is going to fulfill us and satisfy us and make us happy and make us whole. But the reality of it, if we could just see from outside of our very tunnel vision-like perspective, if we could just see the reality of things, we would know, that isn't, in fact, the best thing for me. And sometimes because I'm unable to see that for myself, what I need people in my life who are willing to speak into my life. Not just words of flattery, not just words that I want to hear, not just things that are going to inflate my ego, but sometimes rebuke is necessary. An open rebuke, open, that is uncovered or revealed. A rebuke that is given for the purpose of instruction and given in a spirit of love is to be preferred over concealed love. What we want is flattery, right? That's what we want. I want to be flattered. I want for people to pat me on the back. I want for people to tell me how good and wonderful I am. I want people to hit the thumbs up button, if that's still a thing, on Facebook, or the heart button, or whatever the various emotional reactions that you're permitted to provide through social media these days, right? I want, when I write something, I want for a whole lot of people to clap their hands, pat me on the back, and say I'm a good boy. But what I really need, what is better, what is to be preferred, is the truth spoken in love. Now, I will caution as I feel I must. Sometimes you can speak the truth, but by not speaking it in love, by not having that truth spoken with the characteristic of love driving it, you do harm rather than good. You hurt instead of help. You drive away instead of attract a person to put their trust in. And so what you need is for people to understand, they need to know, they need to be confident in the love that you have for them. Again, speaking to the value of relationships that we build with one another. All right, Proverbs 15, verses 16 and 17, and we're kind of nearing the end here. But here, it says, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Verse 17, better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Verse 17, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it. And then kind of jumping forward in the next chapter, there's better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. And so here we have this kind of triad of verses that are largely saying very, very similar things. The first one says, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasures and trouble with it. The fear of the Lord, as we find in the book of Proverbs from time to time, is essentially helping us to understand what it means to live in proper relationship to God and having the proper regard for God that He deserves. It doesn't necessarily mean, when it talks about the fear of the Lord, some kind of shaking in your boots, quaking with fear, kind of fear of the Lord. I mean, that would not be a healthy relationship. I think we all know and understand that. But a fear of the Lord is my regarding God for who He is, and my regarding myself for who I am in light of that. That's what the fear of the Lord is. It says, I know who is God. I know who is Lord. I know who's in charge. And it is not me. And it says here, better is little. That is, it is better to go without when it comes to the goods of this world and to have and to live by a fear of the Lord. That is, to walk in right relationship with Him. That is a better scenario to find yourself in than to be one who has all of the treasure of the world and great trouble with it. A couple of weeks ago, I was playing golf, and this particular venue overlooks in one place a marina. And you see all these beautiful, beautiful boats there in this marina. And this particular day, there was a cruise ship, as it were. At least that's the size of this thing. It was, as I came to be told, a yacht. You ever seen a yacht before? I kind of revealed my innocence, I think, when talking to one of the people in my group, and I said, like, how much does that even cost? Is that like, do you think that costs $5 million? I'm incredulous, right? That somebody would spend $5 million to build this boat, right? That they're using for their own pleasure. And he looks at me and he says, that is an $80 million ship right there. Like, this is a person that knows this stuff. Oh. To which I guess I would say, well, who wants that trouble, right? Better is little with fear of the Lord than to have the treasure of this world and trouble with it. Who wants the pain and the hassle of having to maintain an $80 million seafaring vessel, right? And so what we're instructed to do here is to set our hearts to live for and obey God, right? Because when we do that, what it does is it invites some really wonderful, wonderful things into our lives. Things like peace. Things like calm. Like, who wouldn't want a little more peace in their lives? Who wouldn't want to just have a higher sense of calm, right? And it says, listen, that far outweighs the troubles that come with seeking out the treasures of the world, because those treasures of the world, what they do is they invite anxiousness. Like the more you have to worry about. The more you have to keep up with. The more you have to deal with. Now, I get it. The guy with the $80 million boat, he's got $80 million worth of people taking care of the $80 million boat, right? Like he's kind of gone over the tipping point, whatever. But for most of us, like what we're invited to is abandoning this life of living with this scarcity mindset, right? This like, hey, if I don't go after this, then I'm going to be missing out on something. And we live with this fear of scarcity, of experiencing having to go without. And we need to rid ourselves of that mindset because of all the trouble that invites into our lives. See, having too little is not the real cause of anxiety. That's what we think it is. Like, I don't have enough money. I need to get paid more. I need better circumstances, right? We feel like having too little, that's what causes anxiousness in our lives. But what really causes anxiousness, what really causes anxiety, is when we are walking out of step with God. Because we are missing out on the peace and the calm that He brings into our lives, even when our situation and our circumstances are not perfect and are not ideal. The next proverb said, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it. Like, who wants to sit around a table with all of the fixings with a bunch of people where everybody hates each other? Like, is that the kind of household we're trying to build? Like, are we all so committed and dedicated to our own avenues of success, right? Dad's running this way, mom's running this way, the kids are running this way, right? And all of a sudden, nobody knows one another. In fact, everybody kind of hates each other, right? Because there's all this strife and fighting and envy, and it's like, oh man, the table is full, but there's no love there. What we want is the fattened ox, unless you're a vegetarian or a vegan, in which case you want, I don't know, whatever the equivalent is to that, right? Whatever the bounty equivalent is to that. You want those things that essentially symbolize riches and material possessions for our lives. But like I said earlier, the pursuit of wealth often comes at the expense of relationships in our lives. And that's what we have to weigh against one another. That's where we have to make these value judgments for ourselves. Are we pursuing wealth? Are we pursuing all that this world has to offer? Well, it may be being done at the expense of important relationships in our lives. And then he says, better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. Better is a little with righteousness. That is, better is the life that is seeking out justice. That's what righteousness is talking about. It's talking about the righteousness of God, the justice of God, the setting in balance and setting in order, the making things as they ought to be, that God is all about. And it is better to have little and to live with that sense of righteousness and justice for the world in which we live than for us to have masses of revenue, but to live with and to put up with and to endure injustice. And so here I would say, as we kind of close out our better than Proverbs, is that you and I, we can make the choices in our lives to use what we have to promote justice over injustice. As you consider what you have, as you consider how far you've come and what you have become, will you leverage, will you use what God has blessed you with to promote justice over injustice? And so those are the better than Proverbs, kind of as they are. So let me close out this series by just bringing us back to where we started. And that is that you and I believe it is in God's heart for you and I to be seeking out wisdom. And we've talked about from time to time what wisdom is. Wisdom is not book smarts. It is not a high level of academic understanding. What wisdom really is, it's a skill. It's a skill that we develop, that we practice, that we hone. From time to time, we'll screw it up, right? And from that screw up, we will learn a lesson in wisdom, and we will be better off for it. The other day, I was on it last week. My wife said we need a new shower head. That usually takes a long time for something like that to go into motion. Not only do we need a new shower head, but the girls need a new shower head in their bathroom too. I went to the home improvement store and I bought 2 identical shower heads and I replaced the shower heads all by myself. Thank you. With just a little help from a YouTube video. Turns out it's pretty easy and not something to be all that proud of. But I did it, and it astonished her, and it was wonderful. I did the first one, and that was great. I did the second one really fast because I knew what I was doing. A couple days ago, she also wanted, the sprayer nozzle thing, in your sink. I don't know if that has a different name. Sprayer nozzle thing sounds good to me, but so that was all kind of messed up, and Renee wanted that replaced. And so turns out you can't buy one of those in the home improvement stores. You have to buy a whole entire kitchen faucet set. So I ordered one from Amazon, just in case this ever happens to you. So it came in, I opened it up. It made sense, like how it goes. And so I put it in. It was a real pain in the neck. It took a long time because it was hard to get to, right? That was the difficulty. It wasn't my lack of understanding and knowledge. It was just hard to get to. And I don't have tools, or good tools. But I got it done. Renee, go ahead, test it. She turns it on. Nothing's leaking. Right? But I had forgotten to put the parts in place that were supposed to be there, so I had to take it all apart again and do it again. That's learning from your mistakes, right? And that's what we do in our lives. We need to learn from those choices. When we make a bad choice, leverage the experience that comes with having made that bad choice. What Proverbs says is, don't keep on doing it. Don't keep on making that same mistake, but choose differently. Seek wisdom, right? We don't always choose wisdom, but like we said in week number 1, we find ourselves sometimes living in antagonism toward wisdom. Why? Because so many of the things that the Proverbs brings out, when it's talking about the comparison of these scenarios, it's actually, the scenario that it's trying to denounce, that's the one we want, right? When it's talking about, poverty and riches, well, which one do you want? Well, of course we want riches. When it's talking about all these variety of circumstances, there's this more appealing thing to us. But wisdom has us choosing the better thing. And what wisdom does, again, and I close with this, is wisdom in those circumstances that we find ourselves where a choice needs to be made, sometimes a difficult choice. Wisdom helps us when the choice is unclear. There are all kinds of things that I can make choices about that are simply black and white, right? This makes sense. This is what I'm going to do. Those choices are easy. They're wonderful. But sometimes in life, I come up against those things for which there is no clear answer. And what wisdom does, when I have honed it, when I have developed it, when I have worked at it, when I have learned from it, it helps me down the road to make the better choice. And I believe that's what God wants, not just for me, but he wants that for you as well. So seek wisdom. Prize it, cherish it, hold it in higher value than rubies and riches in this world. And I believe that if you ask God for wisdom, like his word promises us, he will, in fact, give it to us. Amen?